The Hammer of God, Part 3. The Reverend Wilfred, who had been waiting for him, pale and impatient, as if this little delay were the last straw for his nerves, led him immediately to his favorite corner of the church, that part of the gallery closest to the carved roof and lit by the wonderful window with the angels. The little Latin priest explored and admired everything exhaustively, talking cheerfully but in a low voice all the time. When in the course of his investigation he found the side exit and the winding stair down which Wilfred had rushed to find his brother dead, Father Brown ran, not down, but up, with the agility of a monkey, and his clear voice came from an outer platform above. "Come up here, Mr. Bohan," he called. "The air'll do you good." Bohan followed and came out on a kind of stone gallery or balcony outside the building, from which one could see the illimitable plain in which their small hills stood, wooded away to the purple horizon and dotted with villages and farms. Clear and square, but quite small beneath them, was the blacksmith's yard, where the inspector still stood taking notes and the corpse still lay like a smashed fly. "Might be the map of the world, mightn't it?" said Father Brown. "Yes," said Bohan very gravely, and nodded his head. Immediately beneath and about them, the lines of the Gothic building plunged outward into the void with a sickening swiftness akin to suicide. There is that element of the Titan energy in the architecture of the Middle Ages that, from whatever aspect it might be seen, it always seems to be rushing away, like the strong back of some maddened horse. This church was hewn out of ancient and silent stone, bearded with old fungoids and stained with the nests of birds. And yet, when they saw it from below, it sprang like a fountain at the stars, and when they saw it, as now from above, it poured like a cataract into a voiceless pit. For these two men on the tower were left alone with the most terrible aspect of Gothic: the monstrous foreshortening and disproportion, the dizzy perspectives, the glimpse of great things small and small things great, a topsy-turvydom of stone in the mid-air. Details of stone, enormous by their proximity, were relieved against a pattern of fields and farms, pygmy in their distance. A carved bird or beast at a corner seemed like some vast walking or flying dragon wasting the pastures and villages below. The whole atmosphere was dizzy and dangerous, as if men were upheld in air amid the gyrating wings of colossal genii, and the whole of that old church was tall and rich as a cathedral, seemed to sit upon the sunlit country like a cloudburst. "I think there's something rather dangerous about standing on these high places, even to pray," said Father Brown. "Heights were made to be looked at, not to be looked from." "Do you mean that one may fall over?" asked Wilfred. "I mean that one's soul may fall if one's body doesn't," said the other priest. "I scarcely understand you," remarked Bohun indistinctly. "Look at that blacksmith, for instance," went on Father Brown calmly. "A good man, but not a Christian. Hard, imperious, unforgiving. Well, his Scotch religion was made up by men who prayed on hills and high crags and learned to look down on the world more than to look up at heaven. Humility is the mother of giants. One sees great things from the valley, only small things from the peak." "But he didn't do it," said Bohun tremulously. "No," said the other in an odd voice. "We know he didn't do it." After a moment he resumed, looking tranquilly out over the plain with his pale gray eyes. "I knew a man," he said, "who began by worshipping with others before the altar, but who grew fond of high and lonely places to pray from, corners or niches in the belfry or the spire, and once, in one of those dizzy places where the whole world seemed to turn under him like a wheel, his brain turned also, and he fancied that he was God, so that though he was a good man, he committed a great crime." Wilfred's face was turned away, but his bony hands turned blue and white as they tightened on the parapet of stone. He thought it was given to him to judge the world and strike down the sinner. He would never have had such a thought if he'd been kneeling with other men upon a floor. But he saw all men walking about like insects. He saw one especially strutting just below him, insolent and evident by a bright green hat, a poisonous insect. Rooks cawed around the corners of the belfry, but there were no other sound till Father Brown went on. This also tempted him, that he had in his hand one of the most awful engines of nature. I mean, gravitation, that mad and quickening rush by which all Earth's creatures fly back to her heart when released. See, the inspector is strutting just below us in the smithy. If I were to toss a pebble over this parapet, it would be something like a bullet by the time it struck him. If I were to drop a hammer, even a small hammer. Wilfred Bohun threw one leg over the parapet, and Father Brown had him in a minute by the collar. Not by that door, he said quite gently. That door leads to hell. Bohun staggered back against the wall and stared at him with frightful eyes. How do you know all this? He cried. Are you a devil? I'm a man, answered Father Brown gravely, and therefore have all the devils in my heart. Listen to me, he said after a short pause. I know what you did. At least I can guess the great part of it. When you left your brother, you were racked with no unrighteous rage, to the extent even that you snatched up a small hammer, half inclined to kill him with his foulness in his mouth. Recoiling, you thrust it under your button coat instead and rushed into the church. You pray wildly in many places, under the angel window, upon the platform above, and a higher platform still, from which you could see the colonel's eastern hat, like the back of a green beetle crawling about. Then something snapped in your soul, and you let God's thunderbolt fall. Wilfred put a weak hand to his head and asked in a low voice, How did you know that his hat looked like a green beetle? Oh, that, said the other with the shadow of a smile. That was common sense. But hear me further. I say I know all this, but no one else shall know it. The next step is for you. I shall take no more steps. I will seal this with the seal of confession. If you ask me why, there are many reasons, and only one that concerns you. I leave things to you because you have not yet gone very far wrong, as assassins go. You did not help to fix the crime on the smith when it was easy, or on his wife when that was easy. You tried to fix it on the imbecile because you knew that he could not suffer. That was one of the gleams that is my business to find in assassins. And now come down into the village and go your own way as free as the wind, for I have said my last word. They went down the winding stairs in utter silence and came out into the sunlight by the smithy. Wilfred Bohun carefully unlatched the wooden gate of the yard and going up to the inspector said, I wish to give myself up. I have killed my brother. And that's the end of our story. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.